Welcome to Make Made Simple. In this video, we'll be studying about chapter 2 of engineering mechanics. So chapter 2 is statics of particles, forces in a plane. So in this chapter, we will deal with, vectors which which are in a plane. So what are vectors? Vectors are mathematical expressions possessing magnitude and direction which add according to the parallelogram law. Addition of vectors. Addition of vectors. In this vector, we are talking about concurrent vectors. Concurrent vectors mean that they act on a point. Addition of vectors is commutative. That is, a plus b is equal to b plus c. That is, we can we can join two vectors a vector and b vector, which will give us the resultant vector r vector, or we can just do the opposite. That is, we can draw b vector first and then a vector, which will give us the same resultant r vector. So the resultant of two vectors as is immaterial, as we can join A as first or we can join B as first. This property is called commutative property. Then we have triangle rule. Triangle rule states that the sum of two vectors can be found by arranging P and Q in tip to tail fashion and then connecting the tail of P with the tip of Q. That is, if we have two vectors P and Q, then if we have two vectors P and Q, then we can slide this vector Q to the head of P so that these two vectors are joined in tip to tail fashion. Then the tail of P, if we join the tail of P to the head of Q, that will give us the resultant vector r vector, and that will be equal to P plus Q vector. Now we will see subtraction of two vectors. If we have two vectors P vector and Q vector, then if we have to subtract the two vectors, then we can simply change the direction of Q vector and make this as in this direction and add it to P vector. So P vector minus Q vector is equals to P vector plus minus of q vector. So that would be the subtraction of two vectors. The next thing uh, is sum of three or more vectors. Then we have sum of three or more vectors. Sum of three or more vectors. Suppose we have three vectors p, q, and s. Then to add these two vectors, we can repeatedly apply triangle rule and get the resultant vector. So if I make this, if I apply a triangle rule to p and q vector, so this would be p vector, this would be q vector, and this will give us p plus q vector. Then if we add s to this vector, then this will become p plus q plus s. So by repeatedly applying triangle rule, we can get the resultant of p plus q plus s vector. Alternatively, we can use Polygon rule of vector addition. In this, in Polygon rule of addition, vector addition, we connect the vectors from head to tail fashion, to get the resultant vector. So p plus q, p vector plus q vector plus s vector would be p vector plus q vector plus s vector. will give us the resultant vector. So this is polygon rule of vector addition. Now we come to a property of vector which is associative property. So associative property. The order in which several vectors are added is immaterial. So what is associative property is that we have to add three vectors p plus q plus s, then this can be done in several ways, such as first we can add q and s, then we can add p plus q plus s, or we can add p and s plus q. All these are equal to p plus q plus s. So this is associative property of vector. Then we have product of scalar and a vector. How do we do? Product of a scalar and a vector of a scalar and a vector. Suppose we have p here as given. Now we have to multiply it by 1.5. So that vector would look like this. 1.5 p. And if we multiply it by minus 2, it would look like this. So this is how we make the product of a scalar and a vector. Then the next thing we have resultant of several concurrent forces. Resultant of several concurrent forces. So this 2.1d is actually the title where the book Beer and Johnson has this resultant of several concurrent forces. So resultant of several concurrent forces can be simply given by Polygon rule. Then we have resolution of force into components. So single force F acting on a particle can be replaced by two or more forces that act together by the same effect of the particle. So what this means is, now we were adding two forces and getting the resultant. We were making two forces P vector and Q vector and then getting the resultant vector R. Now what this resolution of forces into component says that is we can make R vector into two components. That is that is if we are given a force F, then we can resolve it into two forces Fx and Fy. Fx and Fy. So this is how we resolve two forces to this is how we resolve force F into Fy and Fx. Now the next thing we have is law of cosines. Law of cosines. Law of cosines is simply how we calculate the resultant of two forces. It is a formula. So if we have two forces, we have two forces like P vector and Q vector. P vector and Q vector. Then the resultant R vector is given as root under of P square plus Q square minus 2PQ cos B minus 2PQ cos B. Now what is this cos B? So if we give this point A, this is B, this is C, if we are giving points to the triangle rule, so this is cos B. This is B. That is the angle contained between the two triangles, two vectors. That is called the cos B. So that is the law of cosines. Then next we have law of sines. Sine. Law of sine states that if we have two vectors P and Q and we know an angle between them, like we have two vectors AB and BC, AB vector and BC vector. This is, or we can say it is P vector, Q vector, R vector. This is 155 degrees. Then we have R by opposite angle. R by sine 155 equals Q by sine A equals P by sine C. So we have what the law of sine says, that is that we can make an equation which states that P by the opposite angle, that is sine C equals Q by the opposite angle sine A equals R by the opposite angle, that is sine 155 degree. So that is what the sine law of sine says. Now we'll quickly do a numerical on this. Suppose we are given two forces. So this has been a very long video. In next video we'll do a numerical in which we have given two forces P and Q at an angle of 20 and 25 degree. So this is actually the a hinge where the two forces are acting, and this angle we know as 20 degree and this is 25 degree. We have to calculate the resultant of the two forces. So that will be done in the next video. So till that time, stay tuned, and please do like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.